I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, May 13th. If everyone would rise to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have present Pamela Preston, Tammy West, Lisa Killian, Jeff Hires, and Tracy Rankin. Ryan has college work, and Jamie has business that she couldn't get away from, and I believe we have some other.
That's correct, Madam President. I would like for you to be aware that Dr. Springston has a medical issue that he's unable to be here, and Carrie had some family situations she had to take care of. And so Mrs. Baker's not here as well tonight, and they both are regretful, but in Scott's case, it had to do with his back, and I told him it was much better that he take one day than need 4 or 5. So,
Yes, for sure.
absolutely. So I wanted you to be aware of that, and we'll fill in to the best of our abilities with what they provided for us, and I think it'll work out just fine.
Yes, very good. Okay, Pamela, you were able to look the bills over?
Yes, I was, and they were all in order, and I make a motion that we approve all the bills.
Okay.
One second.
Motion by Pamela and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 5-0. Now we have special presentations.
And the token may.
What's that?
No.
Oh, yes, sorry. We do need to adopt the agenda. What would I do without Tammy? She's always keeping me on the ball. We need to adopt the agenda, including the supplemental personnel report.
I make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Tammy and a second by Tracy. All in favor? And I'm guessing we're still good on the approval of bills?
Yes.
Okay. Now on to special presentations. Do we want to do the library first, Dr. Dirksen, or librarians first, or do we want to do the?
However you want to do it. I suggest we start with the student council presentations, and then
Okay.
we'll do that.
We'd like to do, honor our, this year's Stuco presidents. Alejandro Rangel is not able to be here tonight, so we have Victoria Garcia that's going to accept for him. And then Andrea, is Andrea here tonight? Yes, there she is. And then Grace. Yep, there's Grace. Okay.
Yep.
So if you would all come up to the front.
Before we do our presentation, we wanted to honor all of you, and Victoria, I want you to come up too. Okay.
Yes.
We'd like to get some pictures, so come on up here, step up on the stage. Grace, we have a little gift for you. Let's see here, Andrea, I got a gift for you. And then we'll get this one to Alejandro. And I thought, I only knew of one that was coming, but I bought a gift certificate of Sonic, and there's enough for 2 drinks. So we appreciate you taking part tonight, okay? But we wanted to get a picture. You added a valuable part to our board meetings every month, and we appreciate getting to know you. We appreciate hearing what's going on in your buildings, and it's really been meaningful to us. So we wanted to show our appreciation. That's a gift certificate for one of the local businesses that show picture shows. Make sure your parents approve of the show you go to.
Oh, yeah.
Take my Bluetooth.
Thank you.
I say.
They'll say, all those young girls with Dr.
That's balance it out. Okay, now we will do the librarian special presentation.
Are they going to do the report?
Yes.
We're going to do the special presentation.
Keeper of the books.
Oh, I'm sorry. Get
Thank you.
So we'll start with the video.
Thank you.
With Batman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
How are you today?
Hi.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm good.
One reason I like going to the library is that it has great books that help me get smarter. I like the book fair and all the funny books that they have. I like how all the books are in order and organized. I like the library because she teaches me about reading.
The way I like to utilize the library is by co-teaching with the librarian, along with using the computer lab and the databases provided. My class loves to use the library to come and look at books to check out to read during guided reading.
We are a community of readers.
What I like about the library is that some of the things that we learn in the library, we don't learn in class. Showing us how to type on the keyboards for 6th grade. A large selection of books it has. Lessons, like how to cite our websites.
And I enjoy the library for my students.
We use the library to help us with searches,
We will read awesome books that will inspire you to do things.
instructions on Noodle tools, and how to properly use it, the website, on how to use our note cards for our research.
It offers them a unique opportunity to find novels and stories that they can relate to.
Very good. Very, very good.
Okay, so I'm Michelle Reed. I'm the high school librarian. First, I want to tell you thank you for letting us come speak to you for a few minutes. And then I want to tell you that video was created by the broadcasting classes at the high school, and I think they did a fantastic job.
They did.
But last month was School Library Month, and so we're a little late, but we got here to tell you a little bit about what we do. Here in our district, our libraries are busy places. Every elementary student goes to the library at least once a week. At the middle school and the high school, students are in the libraries all the time. Last year, I know at the high school, we had over 47,000 individuals check into the library. I'm super proud of that.
Yeah.
So we support our teachers' curriculum, we support literacy, we collaborate with teachers on lots of projects. We also teach research skills, and especially we've started to focus on digital literacy. I know with all the revelations we've had of manipulation of social media and things like that, that teaching students digital literacy is very important, and I feel like we're at the forefront of that. So I just have a couple more things to tell you. There's been over 21 state studies. 21 states have done studies about school librarians and school libraries, and they found that, and consistently across all of these states, they found that when there's a certified school librarian and a school library, that the difference in testing scores, let me back up, that at the high school level, testing scores go up to 8%. At the elementary level, they go up 35%. There's a difference between schools that don't have libraries and librarians and schools that do. We provide internet access, and our schools do too, to students who don't have that at home. We provide libraries to students, books to students and materials to students who live in poverty and don't have those materials available to them. And when we work with teachers in particular, which we do across our entire district, it's so beneficial to our students, just the level of instruction that they receive. So that was super brief, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you want to?
I just would like to say thank you. We appreciate all you do to help our students learn what they need to know.
Could we have the librarians come forward? We want to get your picture as well so that we can put that out there when we get a chance. But we appreciate your attendance tonight. If you want to come up the steps or take the big leap, you're welcome to do one.
Take the big leap. You want me up there too?
We are
Especially the board member here, they're presenting at the board meeting. So, yeah, we just appreciate you being here. I want a fun picture like the one I saw on the video.
Got to sell me some cheese. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. We go.
All right, we are ready for Victoria, if you would do the Dodge City High School Stuco report.
I'm gonna sit here all and eat all night. Stop it.
All right, good evening, everyone. As you've heard, I'm Victoria Garcia, and I'm the current Vice President of the Dot City High School Student Council. And before I start anything today and any updates for this month, I'd like to introduce you to our newest Student Council President for the upcoming year, Alexa Martinez. And so she'll be serving as our SUCO President next year, and she'll be taking the reins for all projects that are to come. This month, the high school and the students themselves have found a lot of success. Senior Jana Garcia was qualified as a top 10 national finalist for the YE Big Idea Startup Challenge, and so she'll be traveling to Detroit, Michigan to compete through the young entrepreneurs and to show off her business idea. The choir had their last concert a couple weeks ago, and as well, on the sports side of things, track, both boys and girls, just won WAC champions this past weekend, and so we're very proud of that. And another big thing coming up this week is our seniors are graduating. So seniors will graduate on Saturday. And as for next year, there's a lot of plans for fundraisers, as well as over the summer, students will be working with the YMCA Teen Nights for Dot City Days. They've been having meetings for the past couple months, and they've kind of revamped all of it to attract more teens and hope to get to the community involved. Lastly, I'd like to mention our new officers for the upcoming year. Alexa Martinez, as I said, will be our SUCO president. Elise Helfrich will serve as the vice president. Abby Harding, our public relations officer. Andrew Finley, our treasurer. And Alondra Valle, our secretary. So that's all for now, and it's been a pleasure reporting for you guys, and I know the future holds great things. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations to both of you.
All right, next up, we've got Andrea from Comanche Middle School.
Sorry.
That is pretty cute.
Good evening. I just want to start off by saying this year has gone by pretty fast.
I agree.
Daniel Acton came to CMS on May 8th and spoke to the student body about body language and using a good tone of voice with others. Tonight, as we speak, CMS is getting ready to perform at the Night of 1,000 Strings. This is the orchestra concert that has all grades. It is the same as Bandorama, but just orchestra. Last Friday was the CMS musical. The cast put on the musical Alice in Wonderland. It was a lot of fun, and we had a great time. The CMS Career Fair is this Wednesday from 9 to 11. Every classroom in CMS will be full of different careers and will have a speaker. The top floor of the building will house several different college representatives. This is all the 8th graders. Junior Honor Society held its annual induction last Wednesday. There are 9 new members for the 2019 through 2020 school year. New student council members will be voted on this week. They are preparing speeches as we speak. Last but not least, we are dissecting frogs in science class, which is not very pleasant, but I'm learning a lot of stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, and now we have Grace Pelton from Dodge City Middle School.
Grace, we're just commenting that you've gotten taller since you started here. in September.
Good evening. I'm excited to be here and present to you for the last time this school year. We had Fine Arts Night last month. We had art displays by the students as well as the faculty. We had our music departments playing music and our choir classes singing. Our drill team had their spring tour last Friday. They performed at 5 different elementary schools for over 3,000 students and faculty. They did an amazing job and represented our school well. We are wrapping up on our spring sports this month. Track had their WAC meet last Thursday. Our track placed in the top 5. Our girls soccer placed 4th out of 8 teams. Our boys soccer got 1st place out of 8 teams, making them the middle school WAC champs. As the school year comes to an end, we have many exciting events going on. Our 6th and 8th grade classes will be going to the Alley for an end-of-the-year celebration. Our 7th grade classes will be going to Boot Hill to experience some of Kansas history in person. Orchestra has their final concert tonight. Our 7th and 8th grade choirs have a concert on Thursday, and both band and jazz band have their final performance on the 20th. Finally, we have Cardinal Jam, a school talent show coming up on the last day of school at 8 o'clock. It'll be filled with many great acts to entertain us, as well as awards and honors to give out to many students. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you this school year. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Grace.
I enjoy all the comments that they make and the time that they take to present to us each month, and we'll miss you guys. Okay, recognition of visitors. Persons may present ideas or concerns regarding USD 443 schools. No action will be taken by the board at this meeting. Personalities and behavior of employees are not to be presented during this period, but are to be reported to the employee's immediate supervisor. The president shall determine the amount of time to be spent for citizen participation. If you'd like to address the board, please do so at this time. Okay, seeing nobody jump up for that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the approval of personnel, including the supplemental personnel report, the approval of minutes from our April 29th Board of Education meeting, approval of Mariah Fund Grant Award for the plaques for the academic halls at the high school, approval of the 2019-2020 elementary student handbook revisions, and the approval of the 2019-2020 safety handbook revisions, the 2019-2020 substitute teacher handbook revisions, approval of Bright Beginnings Policy Council minutes for April 16th, and the update on Head Start Information Memorandum, ACF IMHS 1901, General Disaster Recovery Flexibilities, and that's information only, not approval. Make a motion.
No, second it.
Motion by Tracy and a second by Jeff. All in favor? 5-0.
It's kind of neat, as Tracy said, we just approved 341 pages.
That moves the meeting right along.
That moves the needle.
Okay, under new business, we have curriculum and instruction. First up, I guess, District Wellness Committee update. April?
Hello, everybody. First of all, a couple years ago, I was here and had you guys up doing activity. I remember. So that's not going to happen tonight, so relax. So I just wanted to come tonight and share with you kind of what went on this school year with the district wellness. I'm the wellness coordinator. That sounds way more important than what it is. I also teach PE at Lynn Elementary. So just a few things that we started the year with. We had some big changes in that the state of Kansas no longer took part in the Healthy Kansas Schools grant, and that's something that our district had been part of for, I believe, like the last 10 years. It goes back to Shirley Varan. So this year, we found out kind of late in the game that KSD didn't take part in it. So therefore, that meant we didn't take part in it. So, of course, that came along with a very large grant that we were used to having, but more importantly, it kind of took away our focus, because within that grant, the state created focus points for each school district that was part of it. For example, last year we used a significant portion of the grant to fund heart rate monitors to pilot in our district for my school, Comanche, and the high school. And so we had some big changes facing us. And as I researched to start the year with the other districts who I knew were involved in it, I found that everybody was exactly where we were. We were all a little lost. And so we kind of went into this year with an open mind. I will say that our district is looked at as a district across the state who does some amazing things. And I'll touch on some of those as I go through this really quick. So one of the big things that our district is really receiving a lot of praise for, not locally, you'll all know that, but is the healthy snack change that we did what everybody is supposed to be doing in the state of Kansas. We just actually did it. So although it's been difficult, I'm sure many of the administrators here will agree with that. And it's definitely had its share of challenges. It really is a thing that we need to do to provide our kids with a good start in school, being a place where they are receiving healthy snacks and learning how to reward themselves without food, because I know we're all guilty of that. I definitely am. So what was really cool is Jane Diaz at Ross Elementary, they had created a working document that she was willing to share. She's on the committee as a representative for Ross, and so we were able to send that out district-wide, and people can just, when they find out that something is on the healthy snacks, they add it to the allowed menu. When they find out it's not, it's on the not allowed. And that has made it a lot easier for all of the schools across the state when parents call or even when teachers are looking. Another awesome thing that occurred is Northwest had created a document for their PTO and their parents for Valentine's Day, because we all know what happens on Valentine's Day. And that became a document that we were able to share across the district as well, and it helped a lot of people explain to the parents what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, and I think it just really simplified things. So another thing we focused on this year is looking at other big companies in Dodge City, for lack of better terms. That's really just not a very professional thing, but that's what we called it. And seeing what their insurance incentives look like from a wellness perspective. It's tough, as you guys know, to get adults to do wellness things. They want to come to their job and do their job, and they don't want to be bugged about the rest. So we looked at a lot of companies. A lot of them, what we found was one of my favorites and one of the committee's favorite was, I believe, and I could be mistaken here, but I think it was from the hospital here in town, where they had a lot of different, like a large checklist of things that their employees could earn points for, and then that accumulated to some kind of an incentive at the end of the year. And it wasn't just about exercising or what you ate, but like for them, it being part of the Dodge City Days parade gave them a bonus. And I just thought that was a really cool thing. They participated in a community activity, because that is part of wellness too, and often we overlook that. So that's something that we're going to continue to work on next year. Also this year, Faye Wells and Grace, I think she may have left, but Faye Wells, Grace, and I attended a workshop in Hutchinson put on by KSD for schools for their wellness. It was amazing. There was a lot of really valuable information shared. One thing that was shared, and there was a lot of discussion on, is breakfast in classrooms. And so we came back with that in mind and was able to visit with Kathy, and that's something that we're looking at piloting next year actually at Lynn. There's a lot of research behind the family atmosphere and the idea that every child is getting to eat, we know for sure, to start their day. So that's something that took a lot of our discussion in the in our wellness meetings on in regards to that. Another thing that was spoken on, and Grace actually participated in the kid portion of the day, where they created some videos to promote physical activity throughout the day in your regular content classrooms. And what was really cool to see is all of these, there was probably, I would guess, 30 to 40 kids there at our workshop, and they all crave moving. Every single one of them just want to move more. Some of their ideas were ridiculous, and but a lot of them, the theme was, we just want to move. Not, we don't want to learn, we just want to move. They want to move while learning. So that was something interesting that we learned that day. In addition, a lot of discussion was held on recesses. I know some of the elementary schools have incorporated a second recess in their day, and so we discussed a lot that happening in more than just a couple elementary schools, and the power of that happening not only for the students, but from a wellness perspective for the teachers too, to have that time to go out and move their bodies and be out in the sunshine and just have that extra time to kind of bring down from such a scheduled day. So that's something we discussed a lot. We also held a staff challenge again this year. The picture you're looking at up here, we had 62 staff members participate district-wide. That's a low number, but I also think that there's an important thing to focus on. There's 62 staff members in our district who for 6 weeks put a focus on their wellness. So I think that's a better way to look at it than the ones who didn't participate. This year, the winning school received $250 worth of equipment from US Games, and Sewell Elementary was the winner. So this is a picture of some of their students with the equipment that they got. So we were really excited to be able to do that. They were very excited to win. An interesting fact is Ross Elementary finished second with 2 participants. So I thought that was really cool. And the high school was a very close third, which is a really impressive thing, because I think that is really difficult when you have such a large staff to get the involvement. So we were supposed to hold a wellness walk for all staff members last Wednesday, and we all know what happened to last week in the weather. So that has been rescheduled for this Wednesday at the YMCA at 4:15. Very informal, nothing fancy about it, just an opportunity for the district staff members and their families, if they want, to come up to the YMCA and enjoy a little time walking and talking. And we hope that that can be something that we do on a more regular basis in the future. So also next year, I think we're just looking at increasing the opportunities for staff to be moving and continue on the path we're on with healthy snacks, because we're on a really good path, something to be proud of for sure. And then I really believe that the breakfast in the classroom thing is going to take off. I think that a lot more schools will be interested in that as we go, because it's just really been proven to be very positive. Wichita School District, large school district, that's almost district-wide for them in their elementary schools. So, and then of course I think we want to kind of look into some more wellness incentives and getting more staff members involved in it. That's what I got. Thank you for your time, I really appreciate it.
Got a question. This elementary schools that had the second recess, what's been the effect of that? Is there any data? Sure. Is there any anecdotal?
Sure. So if we look, you guys are all familiar with the KISA rubric. In the physical activity portion, what's recommended is often not happening in elementary schools, and not just in Dodge City. I mean, it's a very common thing for kids to not have that. I don't have like research to pop up on there. I wish I did. Sure. But absolutely, the kids are, I can speak from my school. This is actually our second year of having that second additional recess, and it just gives the kids and the grown-ups, and that's what I often tell people, like the teachers need that downtime. And our teachers are encouraged to go out and move with their kids, not stand and talk to another teacher, like go out there and be active with your kids, build relationships. Relationships being built during play are some of the best relationships that can be built. So my wish, if I had the power, would be that every elementary school had that second recess. And then something I didn't address that we talked about quite a bit is the middle schools having, obviously you couldn't call it recess necessarily, but those kids need that time to decompress a little bit. It doesn't have to be structured. There's a lot of research in the PE world about recess being unstructured time. If you look at Texas Christian University, there's a LINK, is what it's actually called, familiar word, LINK research study done by a professor named Deb Ray, and she has went around, she started this in urban Fort Worth, Texas, and in this, it's a very expensive program to take part of, but it requires schools to have 4 15-minute recesses every single day. And another unique requirement of it is no equipment can be involved. When I say no equipment, I don't mean slides and built-in equipment, but no balls, because what she says happens is then we're organizing soccer games and there's kids being left out. And she teaches a character education within that program, and so it's about building leaders and being creative and all of that kind of stuff. That was a really long answer, Jeff. I apologize.
No.
Anybody have any other questions?
I'm a recess guy.
Yeah, I am too. I really believe in the power of play. I believe that kids absolutely need that time to decompress and not have so much structure that they have so much the rest of their day. So, thank you.
Thanks, April.
Thank you.
I would like us to look at that 2 recess at least. I mean, I'd like the 15 minutes, before 15 minutes, but that I'd probably get shot by a teacher I live with. But I just think that has a ton of merit.
I think we definitely could look into that, and I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of research pulling toward that again, because during the testing days, so much emphasis was put on scores. They thought taking all the time would help the tests, and that hasn't found to be true. So they're going back to realizing kids need to be kids and have that time to play and learn those social skills and all those opportunities. So certainly something we can
And no phones.
consider. So.
No balls, no phones. I'm fine with that.
Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the approval of district multi-year strategic plan.
Close that.
So Matt and I are going to kind of tag team, and I just closed my Surface that had all of that stuff pulled up. So as you guys know, as part of our KISA process last year, one of our main goals was to develop a district strategic plan, and I know that Scott has shared with you our process along the way, the timeline, the family engagement, the community input that they've received, that we have the face of Dodge City, which is the financial, academic, climate, and employment areas. And so what you have in your packet today is our most, I don't know if it's the most recent draft or the most final that we have as of now. We know anytime we have a strategic plan and we set goals and dates and expectations, that once you get into it, of course, some of those pieces will change. You have some baseline pieces that once again we get that information, some of that stuff will adjust. So as it adjusts, of course, that'll come back to you. But we are at a point where we feel like we would like to get your approval on it. Every goal area has, or every area has 2 separate goals, and then those goals then have action steps under it. And we do have, I think, all of the focus area chairs. So if you have some specific questions on one of the areas, we will answer those. But if you don't have any questions, we'd like approval for that. And we'll touch a little bit about that when it comes later on when we're talking about KISA as well. So,
Does anybody have any questions?
I just had one, and I think it's, how much do we work with the city on talking about money, salaries, and that kind of thing? Do we work with the city of what's the average base salary in the city versus the district?
I have that conversation quite frequently because once a month I meet with the county, the college, and the city, and we have that conversation from time to time. And so we definitely have some knowledge of that. And we also have discussions about vacancies and what areas we have in common, and look at cross-sharing in several areas along the way.
That's what I hoped was happening.
I might point out that this is a really important step in the whole process of creating this document, and we are trying to make it relevant. We're trying to keep it in front of you, and it's something that we anticipate each year we'll have to reevaluate, because we do think there will be changes along the way. It's not going to stay the same for 5 years. Right. However, it is a 5-year strategic action plan. And if you recall all the way back in the academic audit, this was one of the recommendations that we have this in place. So we're making great strides and we're moving with direction in mind. So I think this really is important tonight, and I wanted to emphasize that.
Very good.
I think one of the biggest things I appreciate about it is that it just gets everybody talking about the same thing in the same direction. And of course, we all have different roles in what that looks like. But when we're all going in that same direction, you're going to be able to accomplish a lot more and a lot more quickly and stay focused there. So just as an employee of that area, I'm really pleased with it and just kind of excited again about that focus. So
Absolutely. Very good.
I probably missed something, but how are you going to communicate? How are we going to push this down the organization?
yeah, and I don't think we have that in here, but we can go back and we can review and share it. We have a communication plan that goes along with the strategic plan.
Okay.
And it kind of has a loop where anything that goes on in cabinet, identify areas that need to be communicated, and it's going to go to the council. And council is, of course, with all of the principals and all of the directors of different programmings, and then they have a direct expectation then to take it into their building leadership teams, and their building leadership teams share it with their teachers. But then also the teachers go to leadership teams to principal, and that, so it's kind of a collective circle there. And we've also started identifying things in our meetings as just kind of like what we're doing at the board meeting. This is just information. So it's like, okay, now I know, but this is something you have to take back to your staff and talk to them about it. So we have that set up through that. And I don't remember if he calls it the communication plan or the feedback loop or something, but we've started working on that this year and really identifying some like, okay, now is that something I take back or is it just for me to know? So we've got that in place.
Okay. I'm 100%, appreciate all of the work you've done. I've just been around strategic plans for 40 years. And we start out gung-ho and they get put in a drawer.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that as an administrative team that we're committed to it.
Yeah, and I would say
this is a 5-year project.
I would say that we have this kind of in 2 layers. So we're committed because, first of all, we like the direction ourselves. But again, going back with the KISA piece, this is a goal. We only have 2 goals for KISA, and this is one of them, to create, implement, and communicate a strategic plan. And so we're in year 3 of that. So for the next 2 years, we have to track and monitor and report our progress in our plan. And so it's kind of the goal is the plan and the plan is the goal. And so we've really embedded that so it has to stay at the forefront.
Yep. The only other thing I'd point out is, at the beginning of the year, we started with simplify and focus, and we're continuing with simplify and focus. And this has been one of our goals from the start, and we've tied it into everything that we're doing. And we'll continue to do that because you're so right. And I talk about this to the cabinet and I talk about it to the council many times that we can't just put it on a shelf. We can't drop this because otherwise we're just wasting our time and filling up a lot of paper.
Yeah.
And I want it to have meaning, and this group is doing a great job of giving it meaning and giving it life, and it has a purpose right now. We're trying to improve our overall achievement for all kids, and that's what this is all about.
Good.
Okay, I make a motion for approval.
Okay. We have a motion by Tammy and a second by Pamela. All in favor? 5-0. All right. Next up, the FastBridge Learning K-12 Universal Screener.
Tonight I'm bringing before the board the approval of the FastBridge Learning K-12 Universal Screener. FastBridge is a screener that presents level of performance of each student at individual times in math, ELA, and social emotional. The neat thing about it is it's going to provide immediate feedback, bless you.
Thank you.
Immediate feedback for teachers to adjust their curriculum or adjust the needs for each student individually or by groups. We're going to make sure every student receives this screener 3 times a year. And going with what Dr. Dirksen just said, this is going to replace a lot of other screeners we currently do in the district with one screener that we're all doing at set times. So any questions on that before I ask for approval on it?
I had a question. It mentioned in here that other districts use it, have used it. What other districts, that are they similar to
Wichita,
ours?
Garden City.
Okay.
Yep, there are many. It's one of the more common across the state
Okay.
within the last couple of years anyway.
An assessment group picked this out through several of them that they screened, vetted, checked references on, and this is one they unanimously agreed on. So,
Very good.
So if no further questions, we ask the board to approve services from FastBridge Learning, the amount of $58,362.50 to be funded from the following budgets: the software license textbook for $48,862.50, the in-service software maintenance for $3,500, and the consultant district-wide in-service fund for $6,000.
I'll make that motion, sir. Okay. I'll second her motion.
Okay. Motion by Pamela, second by Tracy. All in favor?
Thank you.
5-0.
Kelly.
The literacy grant update.
Like the ice cream cones.
I might need the little box. I'm Kelly Clark, the Literacy Project Manager for the LINK Grant. And speaking of the Strategic Action Plan, as I update you on the work of the grant, I'm also updating you on the goal number 1 for the academic portion of the Strategic Action Plan. So that's how connected everything is. As we wind up this school year, we have Cohort 1 teachers finishing up instructional coaching cycles on explicit vocabulary instruction. We've also held 2 sessions on cultural proficiency and how to be culturally responsive with our students. We're gearing up for next year. We're going to be introducing Cohort 2. So the Cohort 2 teachers will come in and they will basically start where Cohort 1 started this year. Cohort 1 will then move on, go deeper into literacy instruction, and also go further with cultural proficiency training. So we actually have our cohort lists. Our goal is to get those lists to principals tomorrow, and then send out, we have kind of a schedule or a menu of professional learning that's going to be happening with all of those teachers next year. And so as soon as principals approve those cohort lists as accurate, then we'll send that information to principals so that they can push that out to teachers so they are aware of what's coming up next year for them. So with that work, nothing's ever completed, but with that work under our belts, we've actually been able to turn our attention to the summer and also some family engagement activities that we're planning and paraprofessional training that we're planning. So the first thing I'd like to make you aware of is the DC Link Summer Family Activities Program. We're really excited about this because it kind of mirrors in a way a program that's actually John Montford out of Sunnyside, and I think Central also does something with that, correct? It mirrors that program where they take students on field trips over the summer. Where the DC Link program is a little bit different is that it's actually a family program. So we are going to be communicating out to families. It went out at our migrant banquet the other night that we have 4 field trips planned. Sedgwick County Zoo on June 12th, Tanganyika Wildlife Park on June 19th, Exploration Place on July 10th, and Cosmosphere on July 24th. And what we're allowing to happen is we're going to send students and their parents or caregivers to these places. They can register online. They'll go for free. We're providing entrance into the different venues, transportation via activity bus, and we're also providing lunches and healthy snacks. Now, the LINK grant cannot purchase food, so we're working in partnership with the Kansas Health Foundation to, they have a grant that they do, and also I guess we're working with some title funds to provide the food and healthy snacks. So that's the Summer Family Activities Program. Are there any questions on that particular?
What's the limit on how many people can sign up for that? Is it just like one bus gets to go? Or?
No, we actually have 2 activity buses reserved. It's a total of approximately 84. We are hiring in 2 district translators to go, one on each bus. And then, so it leaves 82 positions for kids and their parents. The minimum is that there needs to be 1 adult per child, but a maximum, there has to be at least 1 per 3 children. And you can have 2 adults per child, so that if mom and dad can both go, we want to make that happen for students. These are students who may not otherwise get to have those experiences with their families. The catch is that to be on the activity bus, they must be a current 443 student, so we can't take little bitties, we can't take the brothers and sisters who may not be in school yet, but we're looking to make that experience happen for families.
Kelly shared this at the migrant banquet last week also, so we have got the word out, and I think we'll try to do that in other fashions as well. But there was definitely an interest, and the real target is to give exposure to families and children in our community that otherwise have never had this opportunity. So I think it's really a neat opportunity. I'm happy we're doing it.
Very good. Yeah, I read some research that K-6 students from families who don't have an economic disadvantage spend on average about $9,000, $9,500 per that span, that K-6 span, on these out-of-school learning opportunities, going to museums and that kind of thing. Whereas students who come from economically disadvantaged families spend in that same span about $1,400 or $1,500. So there's a huge gap in those opportunities, and we want to help close that. Another thing that we're providing is called the DC Link Summer Learning Pop-Up Activities Program. And if you've heard of kind of a pop-up boutique or a pop-up restaurant, it's kind of on a similar vein. These activities will be popping up in schools all over Dodge City over the summer. We've put it out to teachers. It went out today. We're looking for them to help us plan and organize these activities. There'll be half-day sessions. We have art, music, cooking, and STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, math. And there'll be each of those kinds of activities for 3 different age groups. We have pre-K, kindergarten through 2nd grade, and 3rd through 5th grade. So we'll be hosting 12 sessions in all, but we want to do them in various locations so that no matter where a child lives, they have an opportunity to come to one near them. So we have we're reaching out to our teachers to help us organize these activities. We can sponsor 12 this year, and so we're really looking at getting that program off the ground, but they will be free. And then finally, our DC Link Summer Paraprofessional Academy will be hosting 4 half-day sessions for paras. We'll have a session on social-emotional learning, supportive reading strategies, positive behavior management, and cultural proficiency. We will be providing a stipend to paras who come, with a bonus to paras who attend all 4 sessions over the summer. We're really wanting to encourage them to come and learn more about the kiddos. We have 70 spots available, and it went out today, this afternoon, and when I checked at 5:30 before I came here, we already had 16 enrolled.
Very good.
So I'm very optimistic about the response to that.
Good.
Is there anything I can answer about the Para Academy?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, next up, we have the Dodge City High School Perkins Innovation and Modernization Grant.
Good evening, Board. I'm stepping in for Dr. Springston tonight in regard to the Perkins Innovation and Modernization Grant. Tonight, we are requesting approval for your support in moving forward with this grant application. And let me make it clear, USD 443 is not submitting the grant. We were sought out by ESDAC, which is a service center very similar to what Ensign is, but it's in the Hutchinson area, ESDAC, and they contacted Dodge City, the Dodge City High School, about being a hub for this industrialized robotic pathway or courses. where students can become certified in industrial robotics. There's some certain things that the district has to do. We have to get some support from community businesses. I have already visited with Dodge City Community College, and I have a letter from Dr. Nolte having their support so that they can partner with us. There's 4 levels of certification that are available. Students could get certifications levels 1 and 2 at the high school, and the idea is that they would continue on at the community college for certifications numbers 3 and 4. And then if they wanted to go to Fort Hays State for a baccalaureate degree, they could, or they could just simply go out into the workforce with any one of those 4 levels of certification. It's a 5-year grant. Dodge City High School would not be involved until year number 2 of the grant. And year 2 is simply where an instructor, 2 instructors, would go to Minnesota to get this on-site training for the curriculum to teach the industrialized robotics. And then year 3 is actually when the curriculum would be available to our students to begin learning that information. So again, we're just simply requesting for your approval to move forward with this, to give our blessing to ESDAC so that they could enter our name in their grant. Again, that grant is due June 14th, and it's a competitive grant, and whether they get it or not, that's up to whoever decides, but at least we are wanting to throw our name in the ring as saying that we would want to be a regional hub as part of that grant.
Do we have instructors that already in place that would teach those classes, or?
No, we do not have robotics currently at the high school. We do not. We have some coding that takes place at the high school with a variety of instructors, but as far as a pathway, that's yet to come. However, if the grant is approved and you give your blessing with it, that is something that Ms. Feist and I will look into as far as giving us a couple of years to put into place a pathway with robotics involved with it.
Do you need any more business? What kind of business support do you need?
Gotcha. Business support in terms of industries that are looking to use robotics applications in their industry. So whether it's packing or whether it's distribution, whatever it may be, if there's businesses out there, and we're working with Joanne Knight with this to say yes, this company would move along with this process if there's individuals in the community who have this certification.
You need to come talk to us at CertTech because we've got to update our labs, and robotics, automation are going to be a huge part of it. I mean, it's one of our chief concerns.
Do you have robotics?
No, we do not.
Is there anyone in Dodge who does?
I don't believe that there is currently, no.
There will be.
Yeah.
Because we can't find labor. We've got to automate. Our labor pool is nil to nothing.
How close to robotics is the packing plant where we saw the boxes and all that? I mean,
you know what, exactly right. They do use robotics in that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and they spent $54 million on their area to modernize that. And one thing I wanted you to emphasize is we're not doing this just to be a hub for ESDAC. We're doing this because it's a pathway that we see is a direction in which Dodge City schools need to go.
Absolutely, and that's the whole idea, is that work with workforce data, that is what the direction that we need to go, and that's what the data is trying to tell us. So you're exactly right. It is, it's a direction that this industries in this area is going to move towards, and we need to have individuals who have that certification to fill those jobs.
There's a
elementary handbook. You just approved the individual building elementary handbooks, but this is the main one that goes out and all of the elementaries follow, and then they just kind of have some additional pieces that was part of your approval process tonight. So The elementary handbook that you have in front of you has very minor changes. The biggest thing was we have changed the way we're going to be doing parent-teacher conferences. And so in the fall, we'll still do it at the end of the quarter, but in the spring, we're going to do it at a midterm time. So we just made that change to reflect that. And then at the secondary level, they're really good about making sure that grades are in on time, of course, for eligibility pieces. And at the elementary level, we don't have eligibility driving that, but we're wanting to be a little bit better about making sure that grades are in the grade book so our families can keep better track of how their students are doing. So we added that in there. Beyond that, then everything else is just real basic. So tonight is just information. You'll have an opportunity to review that, and then I'll ask for approval in the June board meeting.
Okay. Any questions on that at this point? Okay.
Okay, so KISA. So we referred to it a couple of times. And in KISA KISA is our accreditation system. It's a 5-year process, and we are in year 3. Last year, we combined year 1 and 2 together, and so then we're in year 3. We had our visit at the end of April. We focused during that time on our 2 goal areas, and the first one was the district strategic plan. At that time of our visit, we were able to show them the timeline that we had, and then show them the draft plan, which was not quite as final as what we shared with you guys tonight, but it was pretty close. So they got to see that we had set the goal, they saw our communication plan and our draft plan. So the next 2 years then, we will take some of those action steps and some of the measures that we have built into our district strategic plan as our evidence to show. And so because it was the first year, our evidence this year was we have a timeline, now we have a draft plan, and so now we'll start working that, and that will be the results piece of what we have to show for the next 2 years. The second area is our relationship goal, focusing on student self-efficacy and family engagement. And so with that, we kind of have 3 different elements. So one of it was a cultural relevance piece, and that is deeply embedded in the LINK grant. So a lot of our work towards the goal is in that process. So our evidence for that was what we're working on with the LINK. Our family engagement part of that is also part of the LINK grant, but we kind of drove that, and Mr. Montford led that for us, and we had some information sessions with our families and then brought in different people from different levels and are in the process of really trying to come up with a family engagement plan. And we know that just having an event and inviting people to it is not family engagement. And it's nice, attendance is nice, but we know it's a lot deeper than that. So we're trying to come up with a different way to approach and then make sure our families are supported. The third part of that goal was self-efficacy. The thought was if our students believed in themselves and believed that what they put in, they could get out, and that they could influence their success in school, that we would have a deeper impact. And so we're working with that with social emotional pieces. The zones of regulation that you approved a couple of board meetings ago is going to go in and kind of help support that. So the evidence that we shared there, of course, was a self-efficacy survey or questionnaire that we gave to all 3rd grade through 12th graders, and we will do that. We had a December measure and then a spring measure just to try to get 2 touch points and get kind of an average baseline and get something to compare to. Then we'll start embedding some of the self-efficacy pieces. We've done several, like an introduction and then a short PD on it recently, and then we're going to embed that into next school year. And then do another measurement in the spring to see if we're able to start making some changes and helping to build that self-efficacy. So those are our 2 main KISA goals. With that, though, in your board packet, I tried to format something that would take something that is just massive with the accreditation process and get it into some kind of a format that's easy to read and see. Because even though we have 2 goals, we also have state outcomes that we have to keep up with and have multiple measures for. And then we also have our compliance areas. And so the outcomes that we have to focus on, we say focus, and then we list like 20 different things. but our social emotional factors, kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study, high school graduation, post-secondary success, and civic and social engagement. So in each of those results columns have some information of what we have selected to measure. So each year when our KISA team comes out, we have to show progress in all of our areas, or if we're not making progress, we have to show the data that we have and then talk about adjustments that we may need to make. And then we also have our compliance areas, which is stakeholder engagement, communication, multi-tiered systems of support. And I know Dr. Springston has shared a lot with you on what we're doing through the MTSS process. Arts and culture, civic and social engagement, physical and mental health, and April referred to that when she was talking earlier as well, post-secondary success, and diversity and equity. So I think that kind of shows how there's really not much that we're doing that's done in isolation. Everything is really tied in together. Our chair asked us to make sure that once we finalize our strategic plan that we pull goal areas and have our evidence pieces there. Beyond that, he spoke very highly of our district and our team. And I think we're making really good progress and we're moving in the right direction. So, do you have any questions?
I don't think so. Okay. Thank you. All right, we're ready for the middle school's transfer request form and informational sheet.
At the last board meeting, I brought to you a request to put together a middle school transfer request form and informational sheet so we could formalize the process of transfers at the middle school level, much like we have at the grade school level. Tonight, I have the completed forms to you in your board packet, and I've just request approval of those forms moving forward.
Okay.
Motion.
All right.
A second.
We have a motion by Pamela and a second by Tammy. All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right, next up, we have the approval of transfer of funds from gifts and grants.
Okay, and I'll speak on Carrie's behalf and point out that we've actually accomplished this now. We have everything in place for the Alumni Association to be a standalone organization, and they have got permission for their EIN number and everything that they need. So simply asking that you give approval for the transfer of the funds from the Alumni Association account to the newly formed Dodge City High School Alumni Association. And the final payment will be the end of this fiscal year so that they'll begin the next year as a standalone organization. And we're very excited about that, appreciate the effort that's been put behind that. And only thing I can add to that is it's about time. Let's make this work.
You have a really good group of directors, and it's a great age span, too.
Very good.
Does this mean Tammy she will do all the high school reunions? She'll plan them all?
She's going to be the leader for now, so that's the plan. So
I make a motion that we approve the transfer of funds.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Tracy. All in favor? 5-0. All right. Bill?
Yes, the next item on the agenda is basically the board approved many, many months ago, basically an update of an energy management project for the district. And this evening, I'm glad to bring Mr. Miller from ISIN, who's been working on that. And there's a presentation to give the board information. He has pretty well completed one building, but next month he's planning to do 2 more, and before we're done, all the buildings will be done. So if you want to go ahead.
All right, good evening. As Bill said, my name's Sean Miller. I'm with Integrated Consulting Engineers. I'm an energy manager and a professional engineer. Thanks for having me here tonight. And so tonight we're going to talk about the high school. Okay. So basically what we kind of started off with on this is kind of the purpose of the assessment. We wanted to go around to each of the schools, review what the original HVAC design was, then go through the building automation or control systems for each school. We analyzed the utilities, both the electric and the gas. We reviewed the existing conditions of all the equipment in the school. And then we would identify any potential energy conservation measures, or ECMs, things that we could do, improvements that we could do that would save energy and ultimately save money for the district. And so then that leads into the recommendations of improvements that we found. And then, of course, after this, we're still doing our ongoing measurement and verification. So every month, we're still looking at the utility bill. So anything that we do change, we can see and quantify how much money that the district can save and how much energy that they save by implementing anything. And then after we're done with each school, we produce a final report that's a great reference for anybody that's working on the building, that's got every piece of equipment in it, when it was put in, what condition it was in at the time of the report, and all of that. So we've got a lot of information. This presentation may be a little long. I'll try not to bore you. The report's way bigger than this, so.
That's appreciated.
So just to start off with, as far as the system review, this is a map of the floor plan of the first floor of the high school. And basically what I wanted to show you is, you see the 2018, those are in the green areas, those are areas that the equipment was just replaced in 18, or the new areas, the new additions. And the rest of the school that you see 2000, all the equipment and everything is still from the original 2000 school in most of those areas. And I wanted to point that out because ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning, tells our industry that equipment has a shelf life, basically, and that air handlers have a shelf life of about 20 years, and rooftop units have a shelf life of about 15 years. VAV boxes have a shelf life of about 18 years. So you're getting right to that point where you probably need to start thinking about replacing the equipment that's past its age, or getting to that point. Just the second floor kind of showing the same thing. Now, I wanted to go in a little deeper and just show you the floor plan, and this basically, it's probably a little unreadable up here, but this shows you how many pieces of equipment are in the building. There's a lot there. And as we look at the areas that are going to need replacement in the future, you're looking at air handlers in here, rooftop units over here, and through here. So there's quite a few pieces of equipment around that in the future here we're going to have to really start thinking about doing something with. Again, the second floor. Oops. I went one too far there. Okay, and then we'll go through just some of the things that I found as, part of this was walking through the buildings, as I mentioned, checking out what the existing conditions were. So looking at all the air handling units on the building that are about that 2000 vintage, most of them all kind of have the same things going on with them. There's a lot of air leakage around the casing that can be prevented by sealing them up. Anytime you're leaking air, you're going to lose some efficiency, lose some energy. Some loose belts on fans, coils in need of cleaning, and a lot of these things get picked up through maintenance as well. Dirty air filters. We've got some heat recovery units up there that basically pre-treat ventilation that need to be cleaned real well, and some of them weren't even working when we first started looking at those. But we've since got those turned on so that we can get our ventilation going right. One of the things that we found a lot of were, just parts and pieces that were broken or not functioning correctly, things that you really wouldn't notice unless you got in there and you were looking to see how it performed and how it actually looked on site. So, and that would be like your dampers. We had air handling units that were bringing in 100% outside air, and they were also bringing in 100% return air on days when it was either really hot outside or really cold outside, which is not what you want to do, because then you're spending a lot of money to heat or cool that air. Now, all the control system says they were working fine, so unless you went and actually opened it up and looked at it, which nobody has really time for, you wouldn't have noticed some of these things. We had economizers running when, economizer is what you want to do when it's 55 degrees nice outside and bring in outside air to condition rather than spend the money to condition it. Well, we had economizers running when it was 30 degrees outside. And so we're bringing in a lot of air, and places were getting too cold, then we were turning the boilers up and using a lot of heat that we shouldn't have. And like I mentioned, the stuck broken actuators. There's a lot of rooftop units up there as well that are all about in need of replacement. A lot of things, intake screens that need to be cleaned. There were heat recovery units on those that weren't functioning as well. We kind of got those up and running though. Some broken condensate drains, and there's no screens over the condenser coils on all of those rooftop units on the one wing, so a lot of condenser coils have been damaged over the years, which takes away from the efficiency as well. And we've got a lot of nesting birds up there.
Now, on our general maintenance, checking out these systems, Do our maintenance people know what they are supposed to do, or what's within their bailiwick and what's?
We were making excellent progress on this, but we have been without an HVAC technician now for 2 years, and we're currently looking for 2 positions. That is really, this report reemphasizes we really need to get 1 to 2 HVA people on our staff yesterday. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We've been doing the best we can. We can't even get qualified applicants.
Some of the stuff, the cleaning part of it, can that be done with, and by not a HVAC person?
Some of it can be, but a lot of it, you really need somebody who understands the equipment to work on. And I think we were talking today, how many people are you short in your office right now that you'd hire?
About 3 or 4.
I mean, this is just everybody you talk to. Folks, if somebody wants to have a son or daughter go in and make money and be guaranteed a job, go become an HVAC technician.
Absolutely.
So, but you're absolutely right. We have been doing the best we can. We got to figure out how to do a way to better. It's going to be a challenge without the technicians.
Yeah, I threw a fit because we were paying an ungodly amount of money to have the coils cleaned at our business, and filters changed until we tried to do it ourselves. Then I shut up and paid the bill, because you have to have people that know what they're doing, especially with this much equipment.
Right. A school this size with as many systems as you have and as complex as they are, it almost requires a dedicated person for that building. And we see that a lot in other school districts and stuff that you have that. Let's see. Okay, so and some other items we found, even on the new area, there were some energy recovery ventilation units that weren't running when they should have been when the building was occupied. And that we're getting fixed as well. Insulation that needs replaced. And then we'll talk a little bit more about building automation systems, but that's kind of the big deal to really save the energy and save the money. And it really needs to be commissioned and upgraded. Okay, and that brings us into building automation systems. So like I mentioned, building automation systems is basically how you control the building, how you turn on the units, how you turn off the units, how much you condition the building to. That offers your best chance of reducing both your energy usage and your energy cost. And usually will be up to about 20 to 30% of your building utility costs will be related to this. You know, buildings need tune-ups just like your car does, just like anything. You know, you can't build a building one day and then 20 years later expect it to still be working the same if you don't take care of it all the time. And that's more than just maintenance. That's making sure that it's actually running right, and controls are the integral part of that. Currently, this building has 2 different types of control systems. It's got a control system by Train, which was put on 2018 on the addition areas as well as the chiller and boiler plant. And then Johnson Controls is the original control system for the building, which is on the rest of it, and that was the 2000. Train is under contract right now to take over 9 more of the big rooftop units. But there's still a lot of VAV terminal boxes, air handling units, and heat recovery units that need to be switched over in the future.
Sean, I'm sorry, how much did you say accounted for you said something at the beginning of this slide about?
Yeah, a good control system, you know, can account for up to 30% of your utility bills.
Okay.
Some common items that we found during the assessment of the building automation system, and the big one is scheduling issues. You know, you want to condition your building to 72 degrees, you know, if you're cold or hot, you know, keeping it 72, people feel comfortable. But when people aren't there, you don't need to condition your building to that. So while there are some setbacks in place, we feel that we could probably be a little more aggressive and take some setbacks down and save some energy that way. Ventilation is the other thing. You know, back when systems 20, 30 years ago were put in, there wasn't a big deal about energy costs. So they didn't decouple or separate ventilation schedules from occupied schedules. So those kind of systems, when the building starts up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you want to warm it up or cool it down, it's going to ventilate completely with nobody in the building. Well, we don't do that anymore, so we try to separate those out. So your new Train system can do that, your old JCI system can't. And that's covering 60% of the building that you're currently still ventilating when people aren't in the building. Simultaneous heating and cooling, as I mentioned, there's a lot of actuators and stuff we were able to encounter.
How does that happen?
You know, we're broken and we're both heating and cooling, trying to get this air up to
create rain.
Evidence of valve and sensor issues where we were seeing valves shut off, but we were getting heat through the units still, so we have leakage on valves. We've got sensors that are reading, things that aren't what they should be. And back to that JCI system, it's just the functionality and capabilities of it just don't lend itself to do very much with it. But it's not all just the old stuff. I took this snapshot last night at 8 o'clock just because I was curious to see this is off the train system, what the building was doing at 8 o'clock at night when it's unoccupied, it's 72 degrees outside, low humidity. And what I found was that out of the 75 units, 50 of them weren't running. They were either heating or cooling, yet the building was unoccupied and it was all set to be off. So,
This is in the new part?
Yes. Now, we're still within the first year of that being done, so we're still fine tuning things. So I don't want to throw anybody under the bus there, but that's something that they're still working on. But just to show you how things can go out of whack, because a lot of this is related to also people that will turn on overrides on the system so that, if somebody complains that they're too hot or too cold, then the maintenance or whoever will come in and they'll turn it down and forget to turn it back.
Who has access to those controls?
I don't know who all has access. Maintenance, but yeah.
Well, everybody knows how to override theirs.
Probably, yeah.
Every classroom teacher,
I would imagine, yeah, that's the way it, yeah. And it's supposed to be for a certain amount of time, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 hours usually is what they do.
So everybody's been instructed on that, so when they go up there, because in the perfect world, when it works right, it is going back down if it's cold outside.
Right.
But what he's also saying is correct. If I'm standing even in our new wings in certain classrooms, I know that what is showing on the wall as a temperature is nowhere close to being accurate. What it shows on the computer is what it's showing on that thermostat, but it may be 10 degrees colder or 10 degrees warmer.
10 degrees?
Oh, yeah.
But-
Sometimes in the winter, we had very cold months.
But isn't there a process of balancing that has to take place in all of this that we're not even there yet?
Well, there's still usually it takes a year to fine tune everything, but one of the things, and we'll recommend in this report, is that the building be commissioned, that we go through and check every little piece of that, because typically, for some reason, that never happens in construction projects, and it should.
Yeah,
but it doesn't.
otherwise we're gonna have this forever.
Exactly, and then you'll see things like this. We have 17-degree swings in some areas that I found. Okay, now going from there, we looked at the controls, saw what it told us, but we also decided to monitor the building with some of our own monitors. So we put temperature, humidity monitors, CO2 monitors around the building in different areas to see how the building was really working in comparison. So the next two sheets here, the next two slides, basically just show you some of the areas that we put those. Then, we monitored from November 28th through December 1st, so we're in heating at this point. Some of the common results that we found through here was that the temperature was actually pretty consistent. It was around that 72-degree mark, 70, 72. And you can see on this, that's what this graph here is. Yeah. So it's pretty consistent temperature. This is the indoor temperature. The bottom line is the outdoor temperature. So you say we stay pretty consistent. But one thing we don't do is we don't really set it back. We're setting it back a little bit here, a little bit here, and then on the weekend, we're setting it back a little bit as well. What we really need to be doing is setting it so that this line falls down to this next, 60, 65 degrees in heating. Setting back is perfectly recoverable with the system you have the next day and can save quite a bit of energy by doing so. Humidity was pretty consistent across the board, regardless of weather, so we didn't feel like we had a big envelope problem. Carbon dioxide levels, though, varied based on the system and the age, and I've got some examples I want to show you there. And the reason carbon dioxide is important to look at is because it tells us whether we're over-ventilating or we're under-ventilating the room. That is, bringing fresh air or not bringing in enough fresh air, which can affect how the kids and the staff and everybody react within the space.
Yeah.
So this first sensor was in the commons area. Now, commons area, we're not super worried about hitting that 1,000 parts per million. We can actually take it up to 1,200 parts per million because people aren't just sitting down all the time. They're moving around a little bit, and there's a lot more action. But what we found with this is that we're only hitting at peak at lunchtime around 700 parts per million. So we're actually over-ventilating this space. So we could actually put in a CO2 sensor and measure CO2 and actually let this creep back up to about 1,000, we could probably save quite a bit of energy and money in a space like this. The gray line across is 400 parts per million, and that's typically what your outside CO2 runs. So our second sensor was in a classroom that has one of the older rooftop units, which was a DX with constant volume control, meaning when it wants to cool, it just comes on, cools it down, and then turns off. What we saw here in those areas was that we were peaking up 1,200 up to almost 1,400 parts per million. So in that older wing that has a lot of those older rooftop units, we were seeing that we probably need to take another look at how much ventilation we're putting over there, that we're not ventilating enough. Because once we hit over 1,000 to 1,200 in a classroom setting, that's when kids start to get a little drowsy and get a little sleepy and stuff like that.
Yikes. Yeah, that's scary.
Now the classrooms with the air handling units with VAV units, and those are the two big, the big academic wings. Now that's got an air handler on the roof that serves a box down below that lets the air in and out of it. So it's different than just a regular rooftop. Those we looked around and those were working great. We're hitting about 800 parts per million at peak times through there, and that's exactly what we want to do on classroom. That's a healthy classroom right there. So all those areas seem to be doing okay. Now the classrooms with the new fan coil units on the new edition, we found we were hitting 1,000 parts per million and climbing up a little bit. I've even had one sensor was unplugged after a couple of days because somebody, the alarm went off, but they were peaking at 1,500 parts per million. So we might want to look at some of those areas in the new wing as to why we're getting such high CO2 levels over there. And then the gymnasium, and this is very similar to what the auditorium was. They're both spaces that a lot of people will come into, so you expect to have a high amount of CO2. Both those spaces ran pretty consistently at 500 parts per million or less, which tells me we're way over ventilating those spaces. So putting in CO2 sensors there and dampening that air down would save us quite a bit of energy and money. Next, we'll hit on utility analysis, and I can go through each line by line if you want, but it's probably bore everybody to death. But basically, I wanted to point out, since July of 18, basically when the new edition came online, we started a new real-time pricing tariff with the electricity there. I went through all the bills since then and before then. One thing I did find was a little service availability charge error, so you're going to get a $300 credit on your next bill. A little bit counts, I guess. What it does is it's based on the calendar year 2016. And so we get an energy charge based on the usage from 2016 times the current rate, and the difference between what the school actually uses and what the school used in 2016 is charged at the real-time pricing rate, which changes every 15 minutes throughout the day. And what that does is it really helps us with the new ice plant we have, because now we can get lower rates at night when we want to make ice, which then makes the overall building run more efficiently. And I'll show you some of that here in a second. Just a few tables on what the electricity, this is for 2018. About the average cost of electricity was about $562,000 was the total cost, which is works out to about 8 cents a kilowatt hour, which is less than the 10 cents a kilowatt hour average in the state of Kansas. And your total demand was about $12.29 a kW, which is a little bit higher than the $10 average for 2018. And note that in July, you added over 100,000 square feet of additional space. Another thing to point out is, demand, the difference between demand and usage. Usage is, okay, I'm running the light bulb for this many hours, and for every kilowatt hour it does, that's how much gets charged. Well, demand is when everything comes on at the highest peak, that's what your total demand for that day is, and the total kilowatts, and they charge you at that as well. So your demand is actually about 40%, 46% of your total electrical, which is pretty high. So if we could make a play to reduce that demand, which we can with ICE, then we can really reduce some of your spend. On the natural gas, you've got a great natural gas rate. 44 cents a therm, that's about half of what the Kansas average is. So there wasn't much play for energy or cost savings on the gas side. Just summarizing on the totals here, by taking the electricity and the natural gas and converting them to kBTUs, a common unit, we can actually see that about 55% of the energy used by the building is electric and 45% is gas, which is a little bit off from the 50-50 that the national average is from the commercial building database by the federal government, which says 50-50 for high schools is about the average. Now, we input the data using the EUI and the ECI, which is Energy Utilization Index, which tells you how much energy you use per square foot. It's a great way to compare buildings on efficiency. So this school is about an 80. And then also Energy Cost Index, which is how much money you spend per square foot. So you spend about $1.62. Well, the EPA has the Energy Star program, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. They go from appliances, but also up to buildings. Inputting this data into Energy Star gets the building a score of 48 out of 100. So 50 is the national average, and they base this on correlated compared to the region you're in, as well as the type of building and when the building was built. So it's usually pretty accurate. There's hundreds of thousands of buildings in this database to draw from. So you're about a 48, a little bit less than the national average, and 75 out of 100 would give you a certified Energy Star building of $1.07. So just looking at that, if you could go from 48 to a 50, you could save $100,000 a year. And if you could get it up to 75, it could be a $250,000 savings per year. And it's probably not out of the realm to get at least to the 50 pretty quick. So now let's, I talked about EUI and ECI. I told you how it's a great tool to see how efficient your building is. So this is a graph showing your energy usage index, the kBTUs per square foot, from 2016 all the way to 2019. And what I put in here was a line that shows you this is when your new plant and your new addition came online. So this gray line here, this is when you started using real-time pricing and ICE. You could see almost right away, we had a little bit of a plateau figuring the thing out, but then as soon as it started getting figured out, it was definitely becoming way more efficient than your building had been the last 3 years. And then it continues to do that so far this year. So the real-time pricing really paid off by going to that tariff and utilizing the ICE. For a building where you added an extra 30% of square footage to already be more efficient, it was a good deal. Same thing on the Energy Cost Index. There was a little error in here where they overcharged you demand at one point and then credited it back, and I didn't get that fixed before we did this. But overall, following that same line since then, the cost per square foot has been significantly lower than what it was before. And then just to show you back, building energy usage, this is non-weather normalized, this is straight up energy usage. You've got your natural gas and your electric. You can see your electric is a lot higher than it was, but you added 125,000 square feet, so it makes sense. But as we showed you in the last two slides, you're way more efficient. So that's a good deal. You redid your chiller plant, your boiler plant, and it's paid off dividends because you're using a lot more energy, but you're being a lot more efficient at it already. But there's still some room to move. Just going into weather normalization real quick. Basically, the graphs that we showed you, those were actual usage. To weather normalize that, you can divide that by the number of days that we actually cool or heat. It's a very long linear regression mathematical process, and I could go into it if you want. But basically, when you go through it, you're about 30% less efficient than weather would predict. And a lot of that has to do with the way and most of it has to do with the way the buildings run, as far as setbacks and temperature ranges and those kind of things. And that's not super unusual. Pretty picture if you can see it. But this actually shows you the kilowatt demand, the kilowatts used for every hour for almost a year in the building. And a slice of it going this way is basically a day. So you see the big peak here? Yeah. This is during construction this past summer. So during construction, contractors use a lot of energy and spend a lot of money doing all that stuff. So that's a good point to see prior to that, how your building operated, where in the mornings kind of went low, and they started cooling it down, and then it was pretty pretty dramatic during the day, getting up to some high peaks before edging off at night. After this, when the ice got put in, you could start to see more peaks over here. So this is telling us that we're starting to get the ice going, trying to figure it out. And this is high because you've got a lot more square footage, you're using a lot more energy. But eventually this starts, you can see it start to flatten out. This is what the ice does to your curve. So that's a big difference from a building that had 130,000 square feet less over here to what it is here, how efficient that makes it with the ice plant. This is basically just looking down on top. The whole goal of this is to kind of get this color right here all the way across here. So as we keep tweaking and fine tuning and everything like that, that's what we're trying to get. This is a slice through there. And basically I just want to show you this because you can kind of see a little better, you know, you're making ice here and then you're turning on chiller with some ice, working up and then coming down and then turning on your chiller or your ice again down here. Now what we found in here is that we were also making ice and running chillers on Saturday and Sunday that we probably really don't need because our demand doesn't really require it. So we can actually stop making ice mostly on the weekends and save some money there too. This is just a typical curve throughout the day, and we'll come back to this in a minute. Just a quick thing on real-time pricing. This is a crazy little graph here, but this kind of shows you how it changes all the time. But important things to note is that we're getting minimum charges around 2 to 3 cents, which is great. Maximum charge a couple of times around 10 cents. But our average charge is around less than 6 cents, which is better than the national average of 8 cents that we would get normally. So we're saving money there. And the whole thing is trending lower. If you take a trend line through this, pricing is actually going down with the real-time pricing, whereas if you're stuck into a regular pricing schedule with a normal utility bill, their prices are going up. So it was a good thing to get into. Just a couple of deep dives. This is what it looks like for a month. I won't go too much into that, but the interesting one is what you look at real-time pricing for a day. So this is October 3rd of 18. This was one of the hottest days last fall, if you could believe it, 96 degrees. So we were making ice from about here to here when we were down here in the 4 to 5 cent range, and then making ice around here, again, 4 to 5 cent range. So we weren't running compressors as much up through here when we were running at the 7 to 8. So now we get into some things we can do to save money, save energy. So really the first thing we noticed, and I told you we get to this graph again, is that we're still peaking, even with ice, over 1,000 kW. And we ran the math, we ran the numbers, and we found with the chillers we have, they actually have the capability to do what we call demand limiting. So we can actually run a chiller, and then when it starts to peak up demand to about 1,000 kW, we can drop it off, and then we can start the ice up, instead of just putting as much ice in as we can to start with. What that does for us is it allows us to shave off this entire peak up here and basically move it down here. Doing this doesn't really require any extra money on the district's part. All it is some programming that we can do in-house, and we can save you about $35,000 a year to start off with just by doing this change.
Great.
So just right there, we've paid for this part of the project.
Do that.
So yeah, that was pretty fun to find that we were doing that. So we're working with a train right now to get this figured out and get this implemented on the system as soon as we can.
And then will someone in our district know how to do that? How to program it?
Well, we have to program it through the controls, and then it'll be automatic.
Okay.
And then nobody's really going to have to mess with it here locally. So it'll know how to do it itself once we get it in the programs. Okay. The next one to talk about is, I talked about controls a lot. It's a big deal on the controls. This is a very busy slide, and I apologize for that. But the main thing is we've got train controls in most of the building. It's working good. We still have these old controls. Now, we've already given some numbers to Bill and everything about looking at doing some other upgrades here. And one of the things that's the problem with the controls on the JCI side is we can't see everything to really know how it's working. So one of the things we really recommend that Train can do is integrate with the JCI just so that we can see it. And I think we had a price up there of like 46,000 or something like that, just so that we can see what's going on. And then as we see things that are broken or fell, then we can start replacing things rather than just spending a whole bunch of money up front. Because it may be working fine, or we can fine tune it through the JCI if we could just see it. So that's one thing we wanted to look at. Another one is intelligent services. You've got the Train control system most everywhere in the district, and here as well. Train does some pretty cool stuff that's a little bit more cost to what a base system is, and they call it intelligent services. What it allows us to do, and we have two options up here. The first option is to take everything you currently have with the Train system and add this building performance platform to it. It's about $12,000. What it does is it maps every point for every piece of equipment that they cover, so that we can see everything, and actually Train will monitor it and we monitor it as well, so we can see things before they fell. If condenser temperatures start falling, refrigerant temperatures, pressures start changing, and things like that, it actually alerts you to all of that before failures happen, before problems happen. So it's it's a predictive type thing that can usually save you a lot of money from having to save something that goes out. And it does a whole bunch of data collection as well, so that we can do a lot of analyzation. And the other one is to add all the JCI equipment, which is quite a bit more since it's not Train, but something to think about. And then we'll get into...
I'm sorry, Sean, you said option one.
Yes.
That's at 12,000 as a one-time?
No, there's a I didn't hit that. There's a $1,500 a year upkeep on it. Go back one more. Yeah, $1,500 right there, annual fee for option one.
So you pay the 12,000 up front, and then it's 1,500 a year to...
1,500 a year to upkeep. These are, you can't read these either, but these are some of the things you get out of the intelligent services. Like, it'll actually go through and it will ping all of the equipment and all of the actuators and all the dampers and everything throughout the building, and it will give you a report card basically saying, okay, this is how many times this damper didn't open up to give you the temperature you needed. This is how many times this didn't open, or this is how many times your space didn't keep temperature, and things like that. So now you're identifying all this stuff before it gets to be a huge problem.
And once you identify it, then who fixes it?
Well, then you identify it, we go to maintenance, we say, hey guys, you might want to look at these units, we're having some of these problems here. If they can fix it, they can fix it. If not, you may have to have a separate contractor or somebody come out and do that. It's more predictive maintenance. It's kind of where the whole industry's headed, is actually trying to solve the problems before they happen and not be down after they happen, get them fixed. Some other measures, of course, like I mentioned, you've got some old units that are all about ready to be replaced. So you've got some rooftop units that could be replaced with high efficiency units, converting to single zone. The air handling units you have, they're old, but they're inside, so they're actually in pretty good shape box-wise. I mean, they need some new seals and stuff, but you could actually just probably use the same units and do some conversion on those to help the efficiency, and then also add CO2 ventilation control. There's a AHU3, which is a multi-zone unit, which a multi-zone unit does both simultaneous cooling and heating, so it's not allowed by the energy code anymore because it's an energy waster. You can convert those to VAV. You've got two boilers that are still standard efficiency that could be replaced with high efficiency, except that one's probably last on your list because, as I mentioned before, you don't pay very much at all for gas, so there's not a huge payback on that on this building. But the big one, and the one I bolded, is performance commissioning with the tab. And what that is basically, my company does this, and there's other companies that do it as well, but we go in and we go through every piece of equipment in the building. We look at every actuator, every damper, and we actually test it. We have the control systems going. We identify and we fix things as you go through the whole building. And we make sure that it works not only how it was originally designed, but the most efficient way it possibly can. It's that tune-up that I told you about, basically. And that's something you can do all at once, and then do something that you update throughout the years. We do this a lot. Garden City High School, we did this a couple of years ago on all of their large air handling units. They were a lot worse off than you guys were. But we spent about $75,000 to commission a big part of their building, and it paid off within a year with all the savings we were able to come up with out of it. So, you know, it's a real thing. Usually you see about a 1 to 3 year payback on a performance commissioning job, especially on a building of this size with this many systems. I mean, that would be one of the definite ECMs that I would, and that's one I think I talked to Bill with. We'll get you some pricing on that and what that looks like and what kind of return on investment you could see. And then the building automation programming changes. A lot of these, there's a lot of things we can do with programming to make buildings more efficient. Unfortunately, a lot of your buildings still on the JCI system, we can't do these kind of programming with. So we would have to get this. A lot of this will have to wait on that side until those get updated, which we are updating 9 of those units, so we can change them there. But like ventilation schedules, like I mentioned, not ventilating the building when nobody's in there to warm it up or cool it down. CO2 control we can do. Static pressure reset, not running the fans full out when you really don't need it. And the other one with that, the first thing we talked about, the ECM, about getting more efficient by shaving the peak. What we found actually is you've got an old chiller and you've got 2 new chillers, but the old chiller is actually more efficient to run to begin the day with ice than it is to run the new chillers because of the glycol difference. So we're going to change some things around and schedule chillers a little bit different to become more efficient. So in summary, the high school is your largest and it's your most complex building. There's so many different systems and ways to do things in this building. It's you've got some 20-year-old equipment that needs repair, replaced, or restored. You do spend $1.60 a square foot. So just thinking about that, every 10 cents that we can squeeze out of this building, we can save the district about $45,000, which is pretty good return there. I think there's lots of opportunities from the things we saw. This buildings are a great investment opportunity. You can't invest any of your money anywhere and get a return on investment under 5 years hardly. So it's definitely something to do, and it's something great to do for your students and your staff. So what's next? On the high school, we're going to continue to monitor, and we're going to make these no-cost changes that we talked about, like with the shaving the peak and some of the control and programming stuff, so we can squeeze as much of it as we can without costing you anything to start with. And then we'll get you some information on some of those ECMs as far as what those would cost and what kind of payback you could expect if you want to implement any of those. And then besides the high school, we're working on the other schools as well, and we're hoping to try to get middle school and Comanche next month to come talk to you about those. So.
You're going to come back?
I'm probably going to be here every month, actually. So.
Thank you for the paper.
Martin?
I said I have to thank you for the paper so I can see it up close and personal.
Right.
Bill,
are there any questions? Did I scare you?
I've got a question for Bill. Can you give us a general idea of what we paid for that ice?
I'm going to go back and look at that. It was significant. I think you're going to see a payback on the ice. And what I could do is give that number to Sean, let him prepare a report to say what the payback will be on that.
Okay.
But I think from this report, you do something like that and you pray you made the right decision. Sean, did we make the right decision?
I think you made the right decision. It's working out for you.
Mm-hmm. So it's.
Unless I read this wrong, though, along with the software changes and the program that we may or may not get into, it just emphasizes the need to have attentive maintenance through HVAC employees to do some of the routine monitoring and that predictive area you were talking about. That once they learn how to read the program that you've developed, then they can jump on it rather than having to call the company from the outside. So we really need to make that a bigger focus than it has been. I know we've tried for a while, but we may have to become creative. And
I'm curious if we could do something like what we're doing with the paras to teachers, if we could find somebody in maintenance that would be interested in that we could help them get into that.
I'm open to it. And this is evidence that we need to give it more attention because Sean's right. I mean, the most complex facility we have, and we could be doing something every day, I'm sure. So.
When we had an HVAC guy, one of the first things he did in the morning is go in and look at all the reports, because that way, a lot of times if we saw a problem, he'd pick it up in the morning. We had a pretty good idea with the building automation system what the problem was even before we went to the building. So we could take care of those things really on a very timely basis. But you got to have somebody who understands, can read the reports, understands what that means on the ground in those buildings, so.
And that's what we're here to help you with that and hopefully train your guys along the way so that they can pick that stuff up.
Ramona, is it just salary? What is it?
I think it's a combination of, again, it's sort of like the teachers, just a lack of candidates out there. And then the competition for those candidates is pretty fierce.
And is there a training program for that anywhere close?
There's one in Texas, isn't
Not immediately.
Kansas
When
City.
we were looking for this position, after I first came, we identified some trade schools. I think there was one in Woodward that had a program, and so I reached out to them and used their job posting boards and those kinds of things, but there's really not anything close.
The community college that seems to have the leading program is Johnson County. Just,
Johnson County as well.
am I telling the truth, Jackie?
Yes.
Our local HVAC folks, businesses recruit right out of our building trades, and then they send the students to school. They see if they basically hire them on for summer work, after school work, and if they or somebody they want to employ, then they negotiate, we'll send you to school. I don't know that that's high school students paid to go to HVAC training for the last decade. We probably need to get in the hunt with recruiting right along with business.
For sure.
But the key piece is that we'll pay for you to go to school.
Mhm.
And that's right now, it's, if they're good, they're.
Right.
Shauna, we got a little bit of a ticking time bomb in our 2,000 units,
You know, going through them, they're not in horrible shape. I'd say the rooftop units on the one wing would probably be up by the shop area, that wing of classrooms. Those are probably the ones I'd probably look at first because those look old. They look like they could be replaced pretty easily.
When you say the one closest to the shops, where are you at?
Can we open the presentation back? Yeah, just go to that third slide there, yeah. So this area right here,
Okay, so it's the old Votech building.
the old Votech building, yeah. Those units, there are a lot of issues with the O2 in that area too, so changing those units out to some new units would be good. Some of these other areas, these rooftop units that serve all these VAV boxes, you know, those can actually be retrofitted and maybe better to do that to save upfront cost. And actually, there's a chance they could be retrofitted with chilled water in some of the areas that have DX coils and put it on the chilled water system. So, and then the air handling units, like I said, they're not in bad shape. I think retrofitting those and saving that upfront cost would probably be fine on a lot of those units.
I might mention, when we added the chilled water in the new addition, we brought piping to that size of the building large enough, anticipating we might want to use chilled water on those units. So we have tried to think a little bit ahead on those things. Because the chilled water with the ability of the ice storage, there's just, we think, some savings on energy down the road. Because otherwise, they're either on and hitting, using energy, or they're off. It's just that simple. You don't have the ability to really store the energy and buy it at a cheaper rate. So we have tried to look at that as a future expansion.
Just because I saw my husband's classroom up there, the high CO2 levels, at what point should we be concerned when they're getting that high?
You know, between 12 and 14 or 1,500, kids are getting sleepy. It causes you to be a little drowsy. When you get up to 2,000, 1,800 to 2,000, that's when you really want to, you don't ever want to get up that high because kids are falling asleep at that point. And kids are getting headaches. People are getting headaches at that point. So you're probably still okay, but you don't like people drowsy. There's lots of studies that show test scores and everything that if you're above 1,000 parts per million, the test scores go down linearly. So, typically try to stay under 1,000.
One of the things we might mention, just to explain, when we started, I think one of the first times I hit this was with the auditorium at Dodge City Middle School. And when we changed the system there, you don't want just, because you're heating a room that size, you don't need that much fresh air if all of you got 10 kids performing on the stage. If you got a full house of 450 people, you have a whole different thing. So by putting the CO2 sensors in, it allows the equipment then to give the right amount of fresh air without wasting money. And so that's what we've done, I think, on gymnasiums and auditoriums. I don't think we've got that far on classrooms in general.
No.
But that's the reason, because you take a thing like the middle school auditorium, And if you're bringing in full fresh air, like there's 450 people there, you're just basically wasting your money. So we have made those changes as we've done systems.
Well, I'm interested in your CO2 measurements in the whole district.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
we're doing that on every school.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's going to be very interesting
Yeah,
because that affects learning like it does. I
Yeah,
like
a few years ago, we did a similar deal like this with Garden City Schools, and we had a school that wound up with over 2,000 parts per million in about every classroom. They weren't ventilating at all. And they took action right away, and we replaced every unit in the building, and now it's actually a very energy efficient building now than it was even. It actually saves more money than it did when it wasn't ventilating, even though they're fully ventilating, so. And the kids are a lot healthier.
Yeah, that's the most important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you say earlier that the two different monitoring systems, the temperatures and all the jets, that we'll be able to communicate to one another, to see them, or are you saying that?
I think we're not going to be able to do that unless we pay that extra $46,000 to be able to see the rest of it. So, which would be ideal so that we can at least see what we're working with, because right now we're going
And just so you know, we can't see it either.
What did we approve last time, Bill? I thought we approved, was that at Comanche we approved?
We approved both the high school. We're doing improvements at you want to explain
Right.
the high school and Comanche?
At the high school, I think what was approved was just replacing all the controls on 9 of the rooftop units, the big rooftop units.
So we approved, switching over some of it, but not all of
But
it?
not all of it. There's still a lot of the building left to go.
I didn't realize that when we did that. I thought we were doing it.
That's why I said I can stand in a room and I can call Bob and say, get down here. It's not doing what it says there.
I mean, I think it's.
I got my own little temperature thing now that I.
Yeah.
Police. We did the same with the CO2 because we had individual, in those new academic houses, so we had several, we had individual, whatever you call them.
Monitors, yeah.
Yeah, I know, and
Because we had them set, and we heard them beeping, and that's when we opened that system on our own.
yeah, I know Steve had a dehumidifier going and was pulling gallons of water out for a while.
We were trying everything we could to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, that's part of that
We did it
balancing.
the old-fashioned way, because the system couldn't tell us, didn't at that time tell us.
One of the reasons,
5 little $5 monitors.
one of the reasons we have not come and recommended changing all the controls on some of the Johnson units, as he reported, some of those units are at their end of their useful life. And so you spend money on that this year, then next year come back to the board and say, gee, we really need to replace those units, and the controls we put on those really are no longer needed or necessary. So that's the other balancing act we're trying to do.
And that's why I think we recommend, at least at this point, we spend the money so that we can see what's going on with them, that integration, not replace the full amount of controls until you're probably ready to replace that unit.
I didn't understand that when we approved that.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
Problem.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Safe journey. The next item, let's see here. The next item is a change order basically on the new administration building. What we have done is there's some additional fiber conduits that we put in, and that's 20,000, but we're trying to make sure we can approach that building from multiple ways with fiber. We have talked to our engineers about that, and we feel like that's a good thing, and hopefully we will not have any more central elementary issues because everything's going to be out to the parkway so that we can come into the building multiple ways. So that's the first thing. The SBS roofing, that is changing a TPO roof to an SBS. We feel like that's going to give us a longer life, and especially since we put some additional heating and cooling equipment on that, we felt like that was worthwhile to do that. The mechanical changes, and Sean got out here already, but basically with the some of the changes that we made, and we saved about $500,000, if you remember, by changing the mechanical system that we used in the new administration building. There also had to be some structural changes in that, and that's really for the structural changes, to make sure those units stay on the roof and don't come through the roof. So we felt like that was a pretty important change to make that happen. And there was a wall clarification, and we saved some money on that. So that's the items for this evening.
Okay, I make a motion for approval. Second.
I have a motion by Tammy and a second by Tracy. All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, this is minor, but it keeps everything with the auditors happy, basically with the district-wide security system. they're recommending a deduct of $406. And again, that's when the auditors do their agreed upon procedures, everything balances out to what we've told the board. So that's just basically more of a bookkeeping error.
I would make a motion to deduct $406.
Second. Motion by Jeff, second by Tammy. All in favor? 5-0.
The sale of the building trades lot, basically this was a lot that was purchased in tandem with some additional lots. Its dimensions were ones that we really didn't feel like we could build on at this point. There was a proposal brought to the board, but the board chose to make sure that it was advertised, which it has been through the normal real estate process. And again, we really just received one bid on it. I don't know if you want to make any comments on this or not, but it's basically selling that lot. The money will go back into the buildings trades program.
So it was only on the market one day, technically?
I think he put it in their ads, and I think they also, I mean, they went through kind of a normal
Oh, no, it
process
said
on that.
14.
Was on
It
for
says
a period.
14 days.
Huh?
It says 14 days.
So whatever, yeah, they did whatever on that.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, second by Jeff. All in favor? 5-0.
A bid for copy paper, basically, the recommendation of administration is not to accept the low bid, and I want to be very clear about that. But the copy paper was reviewed by the Public Relations Department, and they felt like that they needed to recommend that we basically buy copy paper from Paper 101. It's a little bit more money, but they said it really does meet the needs, and they felt like it would give us a better product and better service. So that was a recommendation that the Public Relations Department made. I think there's a letter in the board packet that outlines that.
Make that motion.
Motion by Pamela, second by Tammy. All in favor? 5-0.
And the final thing is, not to give away any student confidential information, but we have had a family request, a waiver of instructional material fees, and there is a parent application, which I think has been provided to the board, and administration would recommend the acceptance of that waiver.
Make a motion.
Green folder.
Motion by Tracy. Second. Second by Tammy. All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Is there anything else you need this evening? Okay.
I don't think so. All right. Do we have anything on Parks and Rec? Nothing. Bright Beginnings, Head Start, is there anything we need to know on that, JC? Okay. Special Education.
We haven't had our meeting yet, but we have some very big items. Negotiations are going on, and those could get interesting. And also, they haven't established, it hadn't been the final vote to be a part of our administration building.
Would you like an update on that?
No, I don't.
You have to report.
Would I what now?
Would you like
An
an
update.
update?
Did you legislate?
I would like an update.
No, I would.
No.
Well, our attorney has basically proposed a draft to 613. The draft of that agreement basically is for 10 years. 613 would have liked longer than 10 years. But basically, there is a law that restricts districts in our population size. We can only go out 10 years. So as I told the director of 613, it's not that our board isn't interested in a longer agreement. Legally, we're bound to the 10-year limit by statute. And I think he understands that, and I think he's going to make a favorable recommendation to your board.
Should we put something, memorandum of understanding or something to future boards that, you know, that?
We sure can.
I mean, I'm just.
I don't think you can do that, though, because I don't think you can circumvent the state statute. That
You
only.
can't tie the hands of the future board either.
Yeah, yeah.
Shoot.
But you could let your intentions be known, sure.
Right.
Yeah, you could.
Well, whatever you want to call it. I mean.
Or you could stay on the board for the next 20 years.
Handshake for future people?
There's lots of ways to tackle this.
Let me tell you something. You don't want me on here much longer, trust me. Okay, no, that's, and so we'll probably, if that document is there, we'll probably be voting on it, which I would like to get that signed, sealed, and delivered.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. All right, legislative, Pamela.
I yield to Dr. Dirksen.
Okay, and I will share with you that the Kansas Supreme Court did hear the oral arguments, and Bill was in attendance. I was helping with Dodge City Days here, but the feedback that I got from that was that the case was made on both sides, and the questioning went both ways, really. So the anticipation is that we will know sometime in June. They have till June 30th, but it's expected to be sooner than that. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, I think that the general belief is the court will retain jurisdiction because it was brought up again that the state had previously kind of reneged on an agreement with the Supreme Court. And I think the Supreme Court's very much aware of that. I make no predictions on how the outcome of the case is going to be. I sit there and listen to all the questions back and forth, and there was tough questions from the Supreme Court from both sides. So,
And we'll be anxiously awaiting to hear where the court stands. And from that point, we need to decide where 443 stands. And so until we know, it's only speculation. So I would wait until then so we know more.
Absolutely. Okay. I understand from both Tracy and Tammy that there's not been a capital outlay meeting. No. Okay.
Yeah, is there gonna be one,
yes,
like, in the next month or two? or-
we can do that, yes. That's not.
No, I'm asking you, what you guys had planned.
One thing we did do, my staff met with board member Ms. Preston, and basically she asked for some information, basically, I'm going to say, reformatted in a way that she felt was better for the board to have. We're hoping to have that by the June board meeting. My staff is working on that.
And then we'll get it every month.
Oh,
So-
good.
So that
And
would
then
be a good
schedule
place
something
to really
after
go
that.
forward. I think as you're really looking at next year's budget, that's what you need to decide. You need to kind of, it's one of these things, we need to have a capital outlay meeting, but we also need to know what directions and priorities the board has too. So it's kind of a chicken and egg, but we need to move forward on. I agree.
Well, that gives a little time. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is the calendar committee, and Dr. Dirksen would like to kind of take that on.
Doesn't necessarily pertain to the committee, but it does pertain to the topic of calendar. I want to draw your attention to this color chart that we have presented. I do have extra copies if anybody wants to follow along. It really comes down to a board decision. Yellow represents the regular meeting, pink represents the luncheon meetings. If you can pull your attention to March and April, what we have in March is the regular meeting on March 9th, and then the following week is spring break. Therefore, the luncheon meeting would normally be scheduled on the 23rd, but there's going to be no packet prepared because of spring break. So we have to make a decision, possibility of the 5th Monday, or if you go to April, the problem we run into in April is the regular meeting on the 13th is Easter break. So that typically would not be a regular board meeting as well. So my recommendation is we yield, as we did this year, to no luncheon meeting in March, and we move the regular meeting to April 6th. That's what I'm asking the board to, if you'll give me consensus, we don't need to vote on that, but see a lot of approval.
Heck no, I'll be retired. I'll be looking for lunch.
Call Dr. Dirksen, he'll take it.
I'd be glad to take you to lunch. Yep.
Pick a school.
We'll go to Bad Habits.
It's close. What a guy.
Okay, just a joke.
Entertaining himself tonight.
All right, so that's the way we'll do it, if everybody's okay with that.
Yes, that works.
Great.
And Kansas Heritage Center, I believe they had a moving party or something. I got an email about that.
Last Friday, the Friday before last,
Eating.
right?
There have been, not only has the library moved some things out, but also the Ford County Historical Society has moved some things out. There is still trying to think of the right word, there are still significant items for them to take care of. So we anticipate, in the last conversation I had with the director of the library was, we anticipated to have that all done by June 30th. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Okay.
Now, if I might take just a point of privilege on this, the agreement basically calls for us to pay them over a number of years. If we have cash balance at the end of the year, I would recommend we give them one lump sum, because really, they have performed everything that is on our agreement to perform. And that way you don't have that carrying over multiple years in the future to have to take care of. Again, it depends on the ending cash balance, but if the board's not opposed to that, we will bring back that as a recommendation that then we're done with the Kansas Heritage Center, which I think has been the direction of the board, as I understand it.
Okay.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam President, I will share with the board that the Health Insurance Committee met today. We interviewed potential brokers. It was a very good day. We learned a lot. The committee is going to work on some changes in the program because we learned we can do some things better. And so I would say in June, the committee will bring some meaningful ideas and changes to the board. They said, well, how do you want the board to handle this? And I said, guys, we're going to have to work it out and bring the board, because we don't want to get into a nuts and bolts discussion in a board meeting.
Right.
We want to get into, we want to have the best recommendation within our budgetary constraints that we can possibly can. But I think we can do a much better job for our employees. And I think it's vital and critical for us to do it.
I agree.
And so I learned a lot. I did not know a lot of things in the way the structure and the framework of the plan was, and we can do better. We can do much better. So I'll be excited to bring that to you, but to have the committee bring that to you, because I think we can make some structural changes that will be very, very beneficial for our folks.
I appreciate you serving on that committee. And Jamie is also on the committee. She was unable because
Yeah,
of.
she had a real
Yeah,
pretty
she-
serious business emergency.
She had to take care of that, but she intends on being at the next meeting, so. Okay, where are we at? All right, we've got Tammy scheduled to review district bills prior to the June meeting. Announcements, I'd just like to make a little funny. It's not, I don't know if it's funny or not, but I attended my sister's graduation from nursing school, and it's in New Mexico, and a mariachi band played Pomp and Circumstance. So that's just an idea for you, Jackie. Saturday.
It's actually not that far out.
I'd never heard it that way. It was quite interesting, but.
I can't even imagine.
Saturday, May 18th, Dodge City High School commencement at United Wireless Arena at 10:30. Sunday, May 19th, Dodge City Education Center, Adult Diploma Program graduation ceremony at the high school at 2 o'clock. Wednesday, May 22nd, last day pre-K through 11 classes. Thursday, May 23rd, Teacher Workday, last day of the 2019-2020 teacher contract. No board meeting on Memorial Day. Saturday, June 1st, is the Kansas Teachers Hall of Fame induction ceremony at the high school at 2 o'clock. And then Monday, June 10th, is our next meeting here in the Austin Boardroom at 6 o'clock. Are there items for future board meetings or additional information?
We still haven't had any kind of conversation about what we're going to do with this building.
We have.
Well, I mean, just for a future board meeting, Bill.
We've been planning on having that.
We have had meetings with Brian Delsite because the city has found themselves in similar situations, what to do with an aging building, and also our attorney. So we have had that. We're trying to put that together, and we felt like the board's directive was to outline options to the board, and really it's not our job. It's really a board decision how to dispose of real property. But we're going to try to give you the options and the legal consequences of each one. So that's kind of where that is.
Okay, very good.
We do. Okay.
We do need an executive session for discussion of personnel matters of non-elected personnel. How long?
15 minutes with the school attorney and myself.
All right,
I make a motion for executive session, 15 minutes.
all right. We have a motion by Tammy. Second by Tracy, all in favor?
Favor?